I am sitting in for Olivia Matos, who is under the weather. Speedy recovery, Olivia. Boas melhoras. Today, we have a very special program. We will take you through the new museum devoted to our hero, Aristides de Sousa Mendes, with some of the people most connected to it. One of today's speakers is coming to you from the United Kingdom. Myself and others are joining from Portugal. The dream of creating a museum in Sousa Mendes' home in Portugal in memory of his life-saving action that allowed the Holocaust refugees to escape Nazi-occupied Europe is one dream that dates back many decades. And for our Sousa Mendes Foundation, this is a dream that takes back to our founding in 2010 and is actually part of our mission. There are numerous people who helped bring this museum about: curators, architects, designers, donors, and other activists. You'll meet only a few of these people today, and I want to thank already everybody else who are such a long list. We would need a lot more time to go through it. In addition, before we conclude, we hear from Mayor Paulo Catalino, who has sent a lovely recorded message in video. We will also hear a touching poem published in 1968, just a couple of years after Aristides de Sousa Mendes was honored by Yad Vashem. Speaking for myself, I'm Mariana Abrantes. I have been involved in the Sousa Mendes cause for more than 35 years, first in California and in the US, and then in Portugal. Now I live just a few miles away from the new Sousa Mendes Museum, which is located in Cabanas de Viriato in central Portugal. I can't tell you how happy I am to say, come visit the hometown of Aristides and Angelina, not just for the nice people, not just for the good food and the dumb wine, but especially for the inspiration of one hero and for the numerous dramatic stories of the lives he touched and that he changed for the better. So today, you will hear about the restoration of Casa do Passal, the Sousa Mendes family home. It was forfeited to creditors and fell in total ruin, as you can see in this image, in the low point of 2014, 60 years after his death. Thankfully, the house had been declared a national monument in 2011, and the National Heritage Authority undertook the consolidation of the walls and the replacement of the roof and the windows in 2015, restoring the exterior to its current state, which is lovely. Of course, restoring and refurbishing the badly damaged interior that you can see in the old kitchen here to create the museum took quite a bit longer. But it was finally accomplished this year of 2024, 70 years after his death. And this is the entrance full of people, which is what I'd like to see. The grand staircase is really one of the few interior elements preserved, and it provides a colorful backdrop for all the new memories being created, as you can see in this image with a group of teachers that just visited last week. Since then, since it opened, since the 19th of July when it opened, Aristides' birthday, the museum has been teeming with visitors, and we hope that you too can come and visit soon. For the record, before I turn it over to our speakers, I wanted to mention that Casa do Passal is now a municipal museum created and managed by the municipality of Carregal do Sal and co-financed by investment grants from the European Union and the national government of Portugal. The Sousa Mendes Foundation is a partner institution, of course, and we contributed to the collection, to the exhibitions, to the inauguration, and just as important, we're going to contribute visitors, you. Please come visit. So now I would like to introduce our speakers who will take us inside the Sousa Mendes Museum. Our host will be in the museum will be Luís Medeiros, who was born in Carregal do Sal. He's a neighbor, but he moved to Canada as a teenager to join his family. He studied journalism in Toronto and worked in television. He later relocated to Mexico, gaining a deeper understanding of the rich cultures in other parts of the world. His curiosity and his passion for people led him to a 25-year career in journalism, covering politics, sports, arts, current affairs. And after returning to Portugal 10 years ago, he became a TV producer for TVE, one of Portugal's main television stations. In 2023, having returned to Cargal, Luís, by happy coincidence, has come to join the Sousa Mendes team, a dream job for a storyteller. We will also hear from Alan Drummond, an illustrator from the United Kingdom, who designed the Curious George exhibition, the Sousa Mendes Museum, which was commissioned and sponsored by the Sousa Mendes Foundation with the support of generous donors, including the Tamara Vandenberg Ferguson Foundation. The charming Curious George room is based on the book, The Journey That Saved Curious George, beautifully illustrated by Alan, with text by Louise Borden. I discovered this book in an airport bookshop back in 2007. Alan studied at the Royal College of Art and the London College of Printing. He received accolades for his Royal Mail Millennium Postage Stamp and awards from the National Science Teachers Association and the National Council for Social Studies. His latest books feature a pioneering mix of journalism and reportage drawing to create what he calls his nonfiction reportage picture books. And we are especially pleased to introduce young Jason Abrantes, who is a Portuguese-American great-grandson of Aristides de Sousa Mendes. After working in emergency medicine, Jason switched to the marine field and is now sailing for charter companies in places like Hawaii, the Caribbean, Florida, and most recently, Portugal. Young Jason watched his grandfather, John Abrantes, and others fought fiercely to restore the legacy of Aristides and to salvage the former family home. Today, he is here to share his perspective on the opening of the museum and what it means to him and to his large Sousa Mendes family. But to begin with, then, we will hear from José Maria Lobo Carvalho, who is a Portuguese architect and conservation consultant with important experience in restoring historical buildings and creating museums. He has a PhD in architecture from the Instituto Superior Técnico in Lisbon, a master's in conservation studies from the University of York, and a degree in architecture from Universidade de Lusíada, with part of his studies in the Polytechnic of Milan. He has been a university professor of agriculture for over 20 years. When he was calmly vacationing nearby about a year ago, José Maria was brought in by the municipality of Carregal do Sal to help coordinate the intense works needed over this last critical year to complete the very complex Sousa Mendes Museum project. Opening the museum on the 19th of July, 2024, our hero's 139th birthday, was the ambitious idea of Mayor Paulo Catalino, but it was José Maria who helped bring it all together. Over to you, José Maria.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for Sousa Mendes Foundation for having me. Actually, when I first started this project a little over a year ago, my commission was quite simple, not just to make sure that the museum would open, which was something that for decades had been delayed, but it was also to open it on the 19th of July. So we had a year to do it. The mayor told me in our first conversation, Mariana was there, he said, I stipulated that the birthday of Aristides, which is next year, the 19th, will be the day for the inauguration. I need things moving, and this is a complex project. Could you help me? My first reaction was to ask him for a week, think about it and organize my ideas. And I devised, or at least thought that there were 4 different projects, actually. So creating the museography was one thing that was the major task we had ahead of us, because the building was already under reconstruction in a very final stage. So it must be said that from the 2017, there were works going on. They were coming to an end, and the museography should be starting anytime soon. But we were still to find a company to do that. And there was a year to produce it. But there was also, apart from the museography, the museum as an institution that had to be created from scratch with the director, with the staff, with rules, etc. There was also the governance of it all because there were several institutions involved. And there was the inauguration. And the 19th was really the day where we had already a big responsibility because the Secretary General of the United Nations, Portuguese António Guterres, former Prime Minister, was aware of the project and said that he would want to collaborate in any way. And on the 19th, he would have a participation. So we had a big responsibility ahead of us. We had three entities, three institutions, the municipality, who took the project over and was developing and was responsible for it. But we had the Fundação Sousa Mendes, Portuguese foundation, created by the family Sousa Mendes to buy the house that had been sold away from the family, and their job was to buy their aim was to buy the house and create a museum that had been going on for 20 years. We also had the Ministry of Culture who was funding the project through European funding. So there were responsibilities at a very high level, and there were institutions that needed to set the same table and look at the project with an intense participation. That was my job. I was called in as a project manager. I had to get them all together and start working regularly in order to have a museum on the following year, on the 19th. We had two other partnerships. Obviously, the Sousa Mendes Foundation, which was a partner from very early beginning and wanted to participate and did participate very intensively. And we had the family. The family was very much involved for years. The grandsons of Aristides are coming to an age, they're mostly in their 70s, 80s. It's the last generation. I mean, there's only one child alive. That's Marie-Rose. She lives in France. She's the only living daughter of Aristides. But majorly, the family is now their grandsons who are ahead of this project, helping us in any way they can. And actually, they were an incredible aid because I started this project visiting them one by one and asking them valuable pieces of the family, artifacts, documents, to be the basis of the museum's collection. And so that was my job from January this year, believe it or not. And I started with António Pedro, one of his most active grandsons, with Gerald, with Silvério, visiting their cousins, introducing myself, saying, well, this time, this is it. We'll be having a museum. We're starting to produce the collection. Do you have any important elements that might help us to illustrate the story of your grandfather? And there was something else. Talking to all of these institutions, talk to all of these individuals, I discovered that there were 4 different museums being discussed. The family obviously wanted to have a museum about the man, their grandfather, their father, and their family. They wanted a house museum. And we knew from the beginning that that was not the purpose. Obviously, many in Portugal would like to have a national perspective and talk about the political context of the regime in which Sousa Mendes lived and the way he was expelled from the diplomatic career and all the troubles he had. But that was not also the objective. The international perspective would be about the refugees, which is, in essence, the center of the story. But that would mean putting aside the man, his history, his context, the house. And the house was a 4th museum. People wanted to talk about the rebuilding of the house. So basically, my job was to have everyone at the table and discussing and tuning what was the museum about and how could we produce a collective story in which all these institutions and all these different perspectives would be represented in a coherent way, in a balanced way, telling a story which is incredibly moving, extraordinary in its emotional and human gesture, and touches everyone from Portugal and abroad. And the good news is that on the 19th, we've managed. So there we are. I invite you all to come and visit. It's incredible. Thank you.
Hello, everyone from Cabanas de Viriato, the hometown of our beloved and special Aristides. I'm Luís Medeiros. I'm one of 7 staff members of the Museum Aristides Sousa Mendes, and it's been such a privilege and an honor, excuse me, to be here from day one, speaking to a lot of people, and that's why I have to excuse my voice. As Mariana mentioned before, we've been booming with visitors since the 19th of July. And it is with great pride that we tell you that over 13,000 people have walked in and witnessed this story since that date. 165 only today. I was working until an hour ago. And myself, I grew up here. I grew up coming to see this ruin on the weekends because we knew that someone great and something greater had happened here. And as one of Aristides' grandsons told me recently, it was a ruin with soul. And now the house has even more soul. And I would love to take you in to see a sneak peek of what to expect here at the museum. So we're looking at what I get greeted with every single morning when I come to work. This outstanding piece of architecture, a house from the 20s that was rebuilt, respecting its lines, and it stands out in every single good way. And people know when they come and see this house, they know what to expect inside. And now from the right to the left, so just obviously there's a beautiful work of museography, but also a great work of architectural project to bring this house and keep it the way it was as much as possible. This is the front of the house in order to respect the family and the ones that walked in at the time of Aristides. We did not use this door as the main entrance to the museum. And now let's go inside. So Mariana mentioned before the famous stairwell of Passal. The museography team decided to keep this main hall, this main lobby of the house open, also to feature some of its most beautiful elements. And also because we have a couple of items that take us to understand that this family was a family that loved music. Many say that in this open space, there were a lot of ball dances. And here it is. This is what visitors find in the middle of the three first rooms of the exhibit. And now, from our experience, the room where people spend the most time, the family room. It really takes them into the personal life of Aristides and Angelina and all their children. There's a lot of items from the family, a lot of photos, as you can see, that were so gracefully given to us by Aristides' grandsons. And people just get fascinated by someone that had 15 children. And to understand that family tree, they just spend a lot of time there going through those memories. On to the next clip, please. We all know that Aristides Sousa Mendes had an amazing diplomatic career with a lot of honor and a lot of awards from all the countries that he passed by and where he worked as a consul. And this is the diplomatic room. It just tells us the story of all the places and cities where he represented Portugal until he ended up obviously in the last consular post of Bordeaux from 1938 to 1940. But before that, there was a long and very rewarding career as a consul. Next clip. Oh, the room. Bordeaux, 1940. That summer when Aristides Sousa Mendes decided that he had to save as many lives as possible. And here we feature some of the consular items, including obviously the famous stamp that meant freedom for so many thousands of lives. And obviously the jacket, such an image of the consul that we see often in pictures. It's here also. It is a very special room. We can go on to the next one. In each one of the rooms, because of the themes, we feature a big piece hanging from the ceiling. And in this room in particular, it couldn't be nothing other than the famous stamp from the visas issuing back in 1940. A very special room. And now we're not going to show you everything, but another special preview of the room dedicated to the stories of the lives that Aristides saved. Lots of personal items and some of the most special stories told by the families and their descendants. We're talking about people from 49 different countries. And on the 19th of July, we had 12 of those descendants coming to the museum to tell their story to our president of the Portuguese Republic. It was a very special day. And then obviously the visit doesn't end inside the museum. Aristides was honored with the National Pantheon honors since 2021, but the family requested that his remains were kept in Cabanas de Viriato next to his children that had already passed in the family's vault. And this is where he is. So people who come to Cabanas are more than welcome to visit the museum and then go visit the cemetery where our beloved Aristides is laid to rest. So I hope to see you very soon. There's space for a lot more 13,000 and 13,000 people from all over the world. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it on to Alan Drummond in one of my other favorite cities, London.
Thank you, Lewis. Yes, so I'm Alan Drummond, and I'm an illustrator based in the UK. I had an amazing opportunity to illustrate one refugee story that actually goes right through Aristides' life. So without any further ado, we will go straight on to the slides. Thank you very much. We'll quickly pass through the opening of the museum. Here's me on the inauguration day with the fire brigade behind and villagers. So let's move on to the next slide. Most people have heard of Curious George. I actually hadn't heard of Curious George when I was asked to illustrate the story of Hans and Margaret Ray, who created Curious George. So here am I in my studio, and this is the book that I illustrated. It was written by Louise Borden, and it tells the story of Hans and Margaret Ray escaping from the advancing Nazis in Paris in 1940. As I flick through the book, you'll see that I was working with very small-scale drawings designed to fit in a book format. And the challenge really for making a Curious George room at the museum was to blow these very small drawings up to create an immersive experience for visitors. This was achieved by creating digital wallpaper, and here's some sample pieces that we made. It involved measuring the room and fitting all of these drawings, taking them out of a book and into an immersive experience for the audience. So this is the opening page of the book. Here are Hans and Margaret Ray in New York signing copies of Curious George. And can you see Hans? He's drawing with both hands. He was ambidextrous, a very amazing couple. All of this archive material was gathered for me by Louise, the author. So thank you to Louise for that. So here we are. This shows you the scale that the drawings were enlarged to. This is the staircase in the museum. This will show you the staircase, which I think is a beautiful thing. It's very understated and takes visitors up from the entrance or down out of the museum, one way or the other. So my exhibit works from left to right, and this is the map of the journey that Hans and Margaret Ray took by bicycle, first of all, and then by train, all the way down through France, Spain, and into Portugal, and finally to Lisbon, where they sailed on a ship called the Angola to Brazil, and then subsequently to New York City. You can now see how we've had to put the drawings to fit the room. Also in the education room, there's a beautiful video called Monkey Business, and this was actually by a lovely Japanese director, and there's some really amazing archive footage of the refugees at the time, so contemporary archive footage. Thank you, Matthew. Great. In the cabinet too, thanks to, I think, Olivia or possibly Mariana, there is a copy of the first edition of Curious George. Now, here's one of the main drawings, which I call Paris filling with refugees. I've drawn Hans and Margaret Ray emerging out of the metro, but in early 1940, Paris literally filled with refugees, all moving away from the Nazi invasion. Paris was in danger. My challenge really was to get the costumes right, to get the mood right, to make everybody an individual, young and old, all escaping as best they could with whatever they could find, really. Yeah, so here's, in the case, we do have this original first edition of Curious George. This illustration I call Refugee Road, and I had to imagine children and all kinds of people taking that route down those very familiar roads in France with plane trees each side, possibly being strafed by German planes. So yeah, a sad situation. Here's a quick glimpse outside the window as the president arrives for the inauguration of the museum, and tucked in the corner of the room, there's a rear view of Hans on his bicycle. Now, the room and the museum are all about this moment when you have your visas stamped. And so I've got a queue of people behind Hans and Margaret, and they did get their visas stamped in Bayonne. So yeah, this is, for me, was really amazing, because I mean, here I was in the museum in the home of Aristide, and having illustrated this. I worked on this book actually 20 years ago, so it was really remarkable to come to Portugal and do that. The main room of the museum that you see as you walk in the room, the main room, education room, has the Portuguese flag and this very moment when visas were signed in Bayonne, and not everybody got their papers signed. Lots of people were turned away, which is sad too. A mixture of archive material, photographs, and my illustrations on the wall. Great. They were able to take a bath once they got to Lisbon, which is coming up soon. The little girl there is reading a book called Fifi, and here's the little book called Fifi again, with Hans having a bath in Lisbon. Fifi was the original title of Curious George before it was changed later on. This large wall, the largest wall in the room, gives us a kind of glimpse of the whole journey. So I managed to imagine and draw different scenarios as they traveled. Hans kept a very meager diary, but this is kind of the kind of thing that they packed in their bags. Some of the little deals they had to do to get through different stages of their journey. And we're going backwards a little bit here to the journey through Spain, where they sold their bicycles, and a guard on the train was very suspicious of what they were doing and where they were going. But as soon as he saw the book about Fifi, he realized that they were creatives and not spies. Yeah, here's a little drawing of when they left Lisbon, they headed out via Madeira to Brazil on this ship called the Angola. And doing my research, I managed to find somebody who collected postcards of steamships, and there was the Angola in Lisbon back in 1940. So I had good reference for this. Here they are now in Rio, writing and making phone calls, finally able to talk to people from the past and to plan their future a little bit more before moving on to New York. And here we are with Hans still clutching the manuscript of Fifi. This drawing is important to me because Louise, the author, had seen a previous book I'd done about the Statue of Liberty and thought I was the guy to illustrate the book. Yeah, great. This is what my illustrations look like in the book format. And they've translated beautifully to the walls. Thank you to everybody who's helped me do this, particularly Jose Maria, who allowed me to put my stuff all over the beautiful empty walls of the museum. So that was great. Oh yeah, I created 3 new drawings. This was Mariana's idea. I've got Hans and Margaret on publication day, and then a contemporary reader holding a plush toy of Curious George. So the museum has inspired me to create 3 more illustrations. And yeah, and here's my favorite drawing, Hans and Margaret Ray working together in Brazil, they had 2 pet marmoset monkeys. And here, these are the characters I created based on my research. He was the man with the yellow hat. And this is how the Curious George story begins with a man in the yellow hat. And he was drawing monkeys in the jungle, apparently, when he worked in Brazil. So yes, here we have the dignitaries, including Olivia Mattis, who's sadly not with us tonight. And finally, some shots of people in the education room with, last but not least, children, and children enjoying the exhibits. So thank you so much. There's so many people I wanted to thank. But yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you. And so we can now move on to Jason.
Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Olivia, if you're watching this from home, I hope you feel better, and fellow speakers, hope you guys are all doing well. I just want to start by saying thank you for having me on, Olivia, and also thank you to the entire Sousa Mendes Foundation for everything that you guys do. It's pretty amazing to see the change that you all have made in this world over the past 14 years. And I especially know that my grandfather would be ecstatic to see us talking today about inviting the world back into Casa do Passal. It was so nice to meet you, Olivia and Mariana, at the inauguration in July. And again, I appreciate you for putting this all together and having us all on. Switching gears and kind of speaking from the perspective of the family, the way I see it, the opening of Museu Aristides de Sousa Mendes is a monumental stepping stone in the healing process of a family that has been punished and shamed and separated for decades as a result of Aristides' actions saving thousands of innocent lives. See, as a kid, I remember going to several events with my family around the United States, and even those events that were meant to be honoring Aristides, I still sensed a tone of having to prove to the world that his actions were just and that his punishment was not. But finally, on the day of the inauguration, I really felt a major shift from defending his legacy to finally celebrating it. And to have so much of our huge family all come together from all over the world, taking place on Aristides' birthday, all under the roof of the family home. I mean, it really sent chills down my spine. And, you know, I know everyone else at some point in the day had tears in their eyes. And it was just really profoundly special for all of us. You know, it wasn't, you know, it was wonderful not only to watch my family's reaction, but it was also really wonderful to watch other people's reactions that were visiting. And it seemed that everyone had their own special calling and connection to Casa do Passal for themselves. This story speaks to so many people for so many different reasons. And it seems that for all those people that walk in and really feel connected, you know, that really are connected, before even going inside, the spirit of the home itself invokes so much emotion to its visitors. It's amazing to just gaze up at this huge house on the street and soak in its massive presence in this otherwise really charming and humble little village, which, by the way, I just wanted to mention is an almost forgotten element of this whole experience for visitors, is experiencing the town itself. Cabanas de Viriato is truly beautiful, and it's made up of charming stone buildings and a really friendly community. And for me, it really felt like I was stepping back into a simpler time. I loved my time there. I especially loved my quiet walks around the town before and after the inauguration, where I could just wonder what it was like for my grandfather to grow up in this town. And I could tell it was one of those places where every stone that was laid and every person that you'd meet, it was a major part of their lives here. So it's an extra layer to the experience when you get to go visit. So for those considering visiting the museum, you know, be sure to wander the town, say bon dia to those in the street, talk with people, and really enjoy this magical little place that you find yourself in. And once you actually enter the museum, you'll really feel and come to fully appreciate the preserved spirit of the house. And that it's not just a museum, but it is a sacred family home of Aristides. Your imagination can run wild as you gaze around the house and standing in the very place that so much history and love and hardship and life has all taken place. as you were shown, the museum is laid out wonderfully with these multilingual texts and displays that tell the story of Aristides and the family as you wander from room to room. And while these displays are amazing, and I mean, coming face to face with passports and lists of names and the pen he used and so much more is truly unforgettable. I really loved in particular one photograph of the family that I had never seen before. And it's blown up really large in one of the rooms on the wall. And it shows Aristides and the family all with big bright smiles, and they're just enjoying a ball in their home as they often would. And I love this photo because it shines light into who they really were as people, aside from the more serious diplomatic photos that most of us are familiar with. And you could tell by the laughter on their faces and the look in their eyes, just what a beautiful family and what a special place this was. Gazing at that photo and then realizing where I was standing, I felt that I could almost close my eyes and I could still hear them dancing and laughing about the room. And to me, that's what it is. This museum really is special in that way. That while you learn the true depth of Aristides' story, you also connect to the spirit of the family in a way that's just indescribable. A few days after the event, my cousin Joanna wrote a beautiful text and sent it out to all of us in the family. And it's from the perspective of Aristides and Gigi up in heaven, watching the inauguration from above. I'd like to share just a small piece of it, and forgive me if I'm not the best screen reader, but it really shines light into kind of what we were feeling for that whole day. Gigi, come here quickly. Look, how wonderful. Are you watching? They came, and there's so many. Our children's children and their children and the children of the refugees we managed to save. They came, and they came all over the world, Gigi. They are in our house, they're in the Paso, they're in Cabanas. I'm so happy. We did it, we did what was right, and only this could be the way. There's always been light, and look now how it shines on Cabanas and on the face of each one who walks through the house of our memories. Are you watching, Gigi? History's not over. They will perpetuate what we have made. May God do it all with simple and noble gestures, with courage and with the heart and certainty of heaven. There's still so much to do. I can see it from here, and we must help them. They will hesitate, but you must pray, decide, and act. Our history was not erased. It will stay forever because of all the guardians who did not give up. Just so beautiful, Gigi. And again, this is written by our wonderful cousin, Joanna, and this text leads perfectly into what I really hope carries on from this museum. I pray that as the museum allows the world to learn his story, it inspires each visitor within themselves to pray, to decide, and to act. This world will always be in need of heroes such as Aristides, and it is up to each and every one of us to step into our own light and to act with simple and noble gestures, with the heart and certainty of heaven within ourselves. We must never forget that this house and this story and these events, they were so close to being buried away in history and forever forgotten. So this museum not only assures that the story will live on long after I'm gone, but it also speaks immensely to the perseverance and the heart of its defenders. One of the key ones being the Sousa Mendes Foundation. So thank you all again so much for working so closely with my family for all these years, not giving up on your mission, and for what you have gifted the world through all your efforts. As the great grandson of Aristides de Sousa Mendes, I'd like to extend a truly heartfelt invitation to anyone that's watching to come experience beautiful Portugal, experience the charm of Cabanas de Viriato, and to experience the spirit of Aristides and our family with wide open arms. Aristides and Gigi loved welcoming guests from all walks of life into their home, and know that you too will be warmly embraced as yourself set foot in the Casa do Passat. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate you guys being here. Yeah.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason. Remarkable. And so nice to have a young voice join us. I did meet Jason. He doesn't remember me, but I remember him because I met his father 37 years ago. So thank you so much. And thank you to all our speakers. I do have a couple of announcements that I'd like to make at this point, and then we'll have the Q&A session. The announcements are have to do, of course, with our next two programs. We have a very interesting books discussion on next Sunday, the 22nd of September, Max's War by Libby Fisher-Hellman. It's a fictionalized but true story of one man's decision to fight back against Hitler. As the Nazis conquered Europe, Jewish teen Max Steiner and his parents flee German persecution to Holland, where Max finds true friends and romance. But when Hitler invades in 1940, Max escapes to Chicago, leaving his parents and friends behind. When he learns of his parents' murder, Max immediately enlists in the army. Then on September 29th, we'll have the film We Were the Lucky Ones, directed by Melissa Hacker. It is a story, a film based on, that focuses on the psychology of child survivors and the transmission of memory from one generation to the next. The filmmaker's mother, the Academy Award winner, nominated designer, costume designer Ruth Morley, fled Vienna in 1939, and she gives her testimony in the film alongside other former refugees. We now see a trailer from this film.
In the 9 months leading up to World War II, nearly 10,000 children from Nazi Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Poland were sent to safety in England. My mother was one of these children.
The day he was brought back, there were 2 men with him, and I heard the second man calling up and in effect saying, "Shall we take him in again?" And I knew instinctively if he ever were taken back again, he'd never come out. And I think it was that which made my parents decide to send me away.
All of us, including the children, had a very clear sense of absolute danger, of the malice of the world around us.
I thought, you know, this was an adventure and I would go and my parents would follow. It was no big deal. And that's how we went into this. A little afraid, but sort of also feeling that it was an adventure. We were going to something better. Remember?
Please be sure to register for these very interesting programs. Now I'd like to turn to our audience questions. I hope I can catch all of them, and I will turn them to our speakers in groups. So the first set of questions that I'd like to ask, that I think I can answer myself, is about the film. The film is available for showing for another day. It is available for events in the US. The Sousa Mendes Foundation is the representative for distribution in the US. It may also be shown in the museum in the near future. The museum has an auditorium where films can be seen. So do see the film Disobedience. It is quite well done, and we find that that is a very important introduction to the topic. And then I have a whole set of questions about how to get to Cabanas de Viriato and the distances and so forth. So I'm going to leave that for Luis, but later, because before that, we have quite a few questions about the house. And I will try to, some of them I don't know if the other members of the panel know, but I can, there were questions about how did the house fall into ruin, I don't know if Jason would like to answer that, but perhaps I can start and then Jason can give and can add something. So the house was still was the Aristides lived in the house and when he was demoted, and he had to and then when he died in 1954, his widow remained there, but it was ended up in the hands of the creditors in 1957, and then it went through, it was changed hands a few times. But the house was very big. Nobody was able to actually do anything with it. And so it kept falling apart until, as you saw, 2014. But the foundation, the Fundação Aristides de Sousa Mendes, a Portuguese foundation, received a government grant to buy the house back in 2000. But even then, there was not enough resources to actually restore it and to create a museum. So that is a very long story. We'll have maybe we can have a session just on that, but if we finally managed to get it. There was a question here, Jason, perhaps you'd like to answer whether the cross was already there from the beginning. I believe so, because the house was inherited from a priest, and what when they were traveling in the diplomatic posts, who was at the house, and then another question about Aristides that you can answer, Jason, perhaps, is whether he was Jewish.
No, so yeah, he was Catholic. Of course, he had an affinity for the Jewish community, but yeah, he was a Roman Catholic family, and the cross, is been with the house for a good long time. I'm not sure exactly what year they raised it, but the oldest pictures I've seen of the house, they've had it there. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Jason. So then, there was a question also about whether there was opposition to the creation of the museum, and I can give my view, since I've been involved in it, that there was a lot of foot dragging. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
Some of it was more than maybe a 2 feet dragging, but there was also a lot of support. So it takes. There was a question of persistence. Jason, you'd like to add, or somebody else would like to add something on that?
All I'd say to that is it was a really complex, and obviously it required a good amount of time and resources to do it, and to do it in phases. So I think it needed the time it needed to happen.
Yeah. I'd like to mention one thing, that it's very important that to understand that doing this with the Sousa Mendes Museum, it was also first to require the restoration of democracy in Portugal. So there were a lot of things to be restored. The democracy came back in 1974, and then it took another almost 25 years before the house was, the family was able to buy the house back for the foundation. So this is a long effort. Okay, thank you. Then there was a question about what happened to his secretary, José, who we see in the movie. I don't think anyone else was nearly severely punished as Aristides. And of course, José was following orders, and I don't believe that, I don't know the exact details. I'm afraid I'm not the historian, but I think he was not punished in any way. Then there was questions about the recording in the film, so this will be available on the recording of this session will be available on the YouTube channel of the Sousa Mendes Foundation. You can find it in our website. And now I think I would like to ask Luis to give some details on how to get there and how far it is from Tomar, whether there's a train, is there a hotel and restaurants and so forth? Because then I would like to bring back just for the message from Mayor Catalino and from the poem that Jason is going to read to us, another poem. But please give us all the details on how to get here, Luis.
So when it comes to transit and public transit, there's a couple of ways that you can travel from Lisbon to Carregal do Sal, the municipality where Cabanas de Viriato belongs to. So there's a train connection. The thing now is a large stretch of the railway is being requalified. So the journey takes a little bit longer, but the government says that starting next year or in January, the railway will be completed. So from Lisbon Central Station, which is called Santa Apolónia, to Carregal do Sal, the municipality near Cabanas de Viriato, it's about 2 hours and 45 minutes. And it's such a great ride to do a train ride in Portugal. 3 hours? 3 hours. Okay. Okay, fair enough. 3 hours. But there's also a lot of bus connections, not to Carregal, but to a near town called Tondela, which is about 10 minutes from Carregal. And there's about 5 or 6 daily buses that travel from Lisbon to here, to that town. And it's about 3 hours, 15 minutes. But I like the train ride. It's so beautiful because you can see how diverse this small country is, traveling from Lisbon all the way up north to where we are. In terms of hotels, there's not a lot of hotels in Carregal, and we do hope that this museum will also push the economy that way. But you have a lot of options around us in nearby municipalities that are not far from Cabanas at all, like 10 minutes from Tábua, 10 minutes from Canas Senhorim, that belongs to the municipality of Nelas. Now, when it comes to restaurants, yes, there's a few more options than hotels. You have 3 restaurants in Cabanas de Viriato. 2 of them are just 300 meters down from the museum. And then in the village itself, in town, I mean, there's another 3. So plenty of options to eat really good Portuguese food.
Yes, thank you, Luis. We have the bus rides are quite convenient in Portugal and not very expensive. The train is also not very expensive. And a lot of people that I know actually take the train plus the bus to Carregal or to Nelas, which is even closer than the town mentioned, Tondela. And there's a lot of bed and breakfasts here. There's a bed and breakfast in the village where I'm living, which is the original village which is where the Sousa came to live with Sousa Mendes got together, and where Aristides and Angelina were married. So there's a very good bed and breakfast here. And so it's quite central to Portugal. It's not far away from Salamanca. It's almost the same distance from Spain, that one city in Salamanca. So I think it's quite pleasant to come by and make sure you make time for lunch or dinner. It's usually you'll be pleased. So now that we want to thank everybody for being here, but I'd like to close by hearing the message of Dr. Paulo Catalino. I think I mentioned earlier, Dr. Paulo Catalino was elected as mayor in 2021, and he's a medical doctor. So he took it upon himself to use his rescue skills. He had been director of emergency medicine to actually rescue the project that was going very, very slowly, and he gave a big impetus. And so let us hear now his welcome as well.
É com profunda alegria que abrimos o Museu Aristides de Sousa Mendes, o nosso grande legado, o nosso grande benfeitor da humanidade. Com ele, nós trouxemos uma outra dignidade à sua vida, ao legado que ele nos deixa, e, portanto, para nós era extremamente importante que este museu constituísse sempre este exemplo vivo de alguém que teve a coragem de fazer o bem, de ajudar os outros, de termos uma política de vida mais tolerante, mais inclusiva e que ajuda quem precisa. Nós, em Carregal do Sal, temos vindo a sentir um grande entusiasmo de todas as pessoas a visitar o museu. Hoje temos mais de 12 mil pessoas que visitaram em menos de 2 meses este espaço e que nos têm dado um retorno muito positivo da grande felicidade e da grande dignidade que este espaço constitui para aquilo que são o exemplo de vida do Aristides de Sousa Mendes. A sua história, a sua memória é para nós um marco muito importante. O país precisa, o mundo precisa de bons exemplos para a sociedade. E neste processo, neste projeto, nós contamos com muitos parceiros. Desde logo com um parceiro muito importante para nós, que é a Sousa Mendes Foundation, a quem queria enviar um grande abraço fraterno, de grande reconhecimento, um sentido obrigado à Olívia Matis, que é a sua presidente, por nos ter ajudado tanto a fazer viver esta nova esperança, esta luz nesta casa. Venham visitar o museu, estamos de portas abertas para vos acolher e queremos que este movimento se internacionalize, porque é muito difícil encontrar uma história de vida tão bonita como a que Aristides de Sousa Mendes nos conta, feito heroico, a conseguir salvar tantas e tantas pessoas que hoje conseguem ter direito à vida e à sua dignidade humana. Bem-ajam por isso, venham a Carregal do Sal, venham a Cabanas de Viriato, o Museu de Aristides de Sousa Mendes espera-vos com muita alegria para deixar este legado de esperança e de luz à sociedade.
Thank you. Muito obrigada. So now we go back to Jason, but I just wanted to add one more thing. Of course, we have very good roads in Portugal, and Cabanas de Viriato is 3 hours from Lisbon and 2 hours from Porto, and some people do fly into Porto. So here's a map. That gives you an idea of just how central we are. I think it's the center of the world, but of course I was raised here. So now, Jason, do give us the parting words. I think it would be very, very important to have something to hear this very touching poem.
Sure, my honor. Okay. How many worlds did you save, de Sousa Mendes? Huddled over your inlaid coffee table, signing visas for the despaired multitude, fleeing Nazi ovens, clamoring in fear. Outside your opening door, our sages say, he who saves a life saves a world. How many worlds did you save, weary pen, in cramped fingers signing through the nights, defying Lisbon orders to exclude all Jews? Your Christian conscience hewed a road to martyrdom and heaven, dismissed from office, disgraced, condemned to poverty and disuse. With steadfast you went. To meet our God, you earned your grateful trees in Israel's martyrs' forest, savior of worlds.
Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for being with us. And we remember to come back next week for another very important program. And we hope to see you in Cabanas de Viriato sometime soon. Have a good weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.